are Locked On Panthers, your daily Carolina Panthers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Welcome into another edition of the Locked On Panthers podcast, a part of the Locked On Podcast Network. I'm your host, as always, Julian Council, talking Carolina Panthers with you every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday as we are still in offseason mode here in June. We'll be back to our daily podcast once we get down to training camp in Spartanburg at the end of July. So in the meantime, Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays, which is why it's important for you to subscribe to the show here on YouTube. You can also make sure to check out the show on all the traditional podcasting platforms, whether that be Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, Odyssey, Stitcher, and all the other ones out there. Make sure to rate, review, and subscribe to Locked On Panthers so you don't miss a single episode of the show during the summer and throughout the year, as we usually talk Panthers Monday through Friday here on the Locked On Podcast Network. And be sure to follow me on Twitter at Julian Council, where every single Friday I answer your weekly Friday mailbag questions. And today is Friday, so let's go ahead and get into it. But again, if you want to participate next week, make sure to @ me at Julian Council or just DM me at Julian Council. Send me whatever question you have through my DMs on Twitter. So at Julian Council on Twitter to send in your questions for next week. Let's go ahead, get into this edition of the Weekly Friday Mailbag here on Locked On Panthers. Starting off with Andy. He says, hey, for the Friday mailbag, I think a good comparison for Matt Corral's potential should be Dak Prescott. They both played in the SEC and went later in the draft. Plus, if you look at their stats from their senior year, they are really similar. Do you think Corral has that kind of potential? And Andy gave that to Scott, the Dallas Cowboys quarterback who was drafted in the 4th round a couple years ago. And Matt Corral's past season, they, of course, 3rd-round draft pick out of Ole Miss here in Carolina. So their senior years at Mississippi State and Ole Miss, and I'm sure if there's any Ole Miss fans or Mississippi State fans listening to this, they don't want either one of these guys to be compared to the other with the Egg Bowl, that great rivalry down there in the state of Mississippi. But his senior year, Dak Prescott threw for 37,000 or almost 3,800 yards, while Matt Corral threw for 3,349, passing yards 29 for Dak Prescott, 20 for Corral, interceptions. They both threw 5. QBR, Dak Prescott 151, Matt Corral 155. Rushing yards are also similar, 588, for Dak Prescott, 614. I can't read today. For Matt Corral, rushing touchdowns again similar, 10 for Dak, 11 for Matt Corral. So yeah, senior stats were fairly similar outside of Dak throwing for more yards and more touchdowns. And I don't know. I don't really think that we should go overboard of our expectations for Matt Corral at this point in time. Let's allow him to develop and learn Ben McAdoo's system. And we don't even know whether Ben McAdoo is going to be here past this season. So he might have to be learning all over again next year if there's a brand new coaching staff. And hopefully that's not the case, just for continuity's sake and him allowing him to come in the NFL and be able to work with the same staff and in the same offense over successive seasons from his rookie year to his sophomore year or second year here in the NFL. Yeah, I mean, Dak came in. I don't think anyone expected Dak Prescott. He's similar to kind of Russell Wilson, where he came in and he was just so good. Tony Romo gets hurt. He starts out the season. He's fantastic. The Cowboys are like, you know what? We can't take Dak out. We're going to be the 1 seed. We're trying to win a Super Bowl. I always felt like it was the wrong decision. Tony Romo was an experienced quarterback. You really thought you were going to win a Super Bowl with a rookie quarterback. Obviously, didn't get past Aaron Rodgers in Green Bay in that divisional round. In Dallas, either way, Dak turned out to be a very good player. One of the high-priced quarterbacks in the league. He's been fantastic for Dallas, and he's earned every cent as a 4th-round pick. And hopefully Matt Corral is one of those situations as well where you come in, and it's a little bit different where Tony Romo was still the starter in Dallas, and that was the expectation that he would start that season, where this year I think the expectation probably internally is that Sam Darnold will start, but there's also room for Matt Corral to come in here and take over the starting job. So if we can have the career that Dak's had so far, that would be fantastic. I'm just not going to place those expectations on him. While the potential, it's possible that's there. And you also gave me the height, Dak being 6'2", Matt Corral being 6'2". Matt Corral's not 6'2". He's 6 foot. That's what he's actually. But he has the opportunity to be a good player. Let's just give him time. All right, going to Steven, who asked, should we trade Sam Darnold? I guess swap for swap, Sam Darnold, Baker Mayfield, and include Robbie Anderson with one offensive piece from the Browns, either wide receiver 2 or tight end. I'm just saying sign Cam and trade for Baker and let them battle out. Give him time to learn the playbook, unlike midseason last year and only a couple of days to learn a couple of plays. Let Corral sit and learn the pros and watch out for the cons from both Cam and Baker. Okay, so you want to trade away Sam Darnold, get Baker Mayfield, and get rid of Robbie Anderson as well, and then maybe get the Browns to give you one of their receivers and like David Njoku. I don't really see that happening, first off. And as far as of Cam, we go back to the podcast the other day, and he's talking about how he was put in bad situations. And it would be another bad situation for Cam. He hasn't been here all offseason, hasn't been able to learn the scheme. Now, Matt Rhule said that through the course of 5-6 weeks of training camp and the preseason that he thinks that someone should be able to master or at least know the knowledge, to have the knowledge of the offense, and including a quarterback. And Cam talked about a couple of years ago in New England, kind of in that same situation where he got down to training camp. Now, things were different because it was the COVID-19 in 2020 and all the protocols that they had in the NFL that year. But Cam said he didn't really have control of the offense even going to week 7 and 8. It took him that long. And why would that be any different now with Ben McAdoo in this system? So I don't really feel like Cam coming in here, at least for Cam's sake, really works out for him if he's trying to be the starting quarterback. And I really don't love the idea of him being just a mentor and him and Baker coming in and battling it out. I don't know. I don't really subscribe to that at this point. Just let Sam Darnold be the guy. And then if Matt Corral can beat him out later on, then fine. The Baker Mayfield stuff, it seems like they're going to wait until after mandatory minicamp, which I don't really understand why they would wait till then to ask Baker or to trade for somebody if they're going to do it at all. I don't really love the overall plan at quarterback. I mean, it's going to be Darnold probably for the majority of the season. Maybe Corral if Darnold gets hurt or Corral shows that he's ready to go. I'm not signing up for what you're offering there, Steven. Let's go to Sam. He says, how would you feel about signing free agent J.C. Tretter, who was a Cleveland Brown, to a similar deal that we have for Bozeman? He was a great starter for Cleveland and would really solidify our starting offensive line. Well, I just feel like the starting spot's already gone. Like, you already have Ickey Ekwonu at left tackle, unless you're suggesting don't start Ickey and then put Brady Christensen there, which I don't think you are suggesting. You have Ickey at left, and this is all theoretically so we think is going to happen. Ickey at left guard, Brady Christensen, center, Bradley Bozeman or Pat Elflein, hopefully Bozeman. Right guard would be Austin Corbett, and then right tackle, Taylor Moton. Like, where? So do you want to put J.C. Tretter there, who's a veteran? Would you rather put him there at left guard over Brady Christensen? I mean, I'm willing to listen to that. It would make a lot of sense in terms of just having a veteran next to Ickey Ekwonu if you're going to start Ickey at left tackle this season. I don't love the idea. I don't dislike it, but I'm not totally in love with the idea of having two really young players there on the left side of the offensive line and Ickey Ekwonu, who I have a ton of expectations and hope for over the course of his Panthers career, but he's still a rookie and has yet to play a game in the National Football League. And in Brady Christensen, who played limited snaps last season. So yeah, maybe they can bring in J.C. Tretter for more depth. I just don't know if they want to bring him in to be a starter there at left guard, whereas I would imagine be the position that he would be at. All right, let's take a quick pause here on the show. Then I'll come back and answer more of your weekly Friday mailbag questions here on Locked On Panthers. BetOnline.net is your number one source for all your betting stats and sports info. Find all the latest sports developments, news, and odds, including this year's NBA Finals. 2-1 lead now for the Boston Celtics. The Stanley Cup Conference Finals. The Avs are already in the finals. Will it be the Rangers or will it be the Tampa Bay Lightning facing them for Lord Stanley's Cup? Also, Major League Baseball and, of course, all the latest fighting news from MMA and UFC to boxing. BetOnline is your continued source for all your sports wagering information, including live betting, esports, and more. Head to the website today or use your mobile device to learn more about the trends and action. BetOnline, where the game starts. All right, next question comes from Alex, who asks, how many rounds of golf does Matt Rhule need to play with the team for him to keep his job? You go back to Wednesday's press conference, and I think it was Mike Solarte of Spectrum News. Is it still Spectrum News? I don't know what the hell it's called now. But he was asking Matt Rhule, what have you done or what are you doing to improve as a head coach during this offseason period, as a lot of the talk is surrounding players and what they're doing to improve, as it's a very important season coming up here in 2022 for Matt Rhule, the embattled head coach here in Carolina, who's 10-23 over the first 2 years of his career here in Carolina. And he talked about how he's really focusing on relationships and spending time with players, which he's not been able to do because of the COVID protocol back in 2020. And even less so last year in 2021. And I've challenged him to be more visible in the community now that he's able to do those kind of things. And that's something I would ask him to do if he really wants his fan base to get behind him. And obviously winning would help. But he's been going out on golf outings with players. And apparently today on Friday, he's supposed to go with the offensive lineman. If Taylor Moton's child's birthday doesn't get in the way, he's not sure what the participation will look like. He's went out with Christian McCaffrey and with Shaq Thompson, and I think Jeremy Chin as well. He's gone out with specialists. I know Sam Darnold's a big golfer, so I'm sure he'll play with him at some point in time. And I think it's great that, I mean, if you work these guys, if you spend time with them, know them on a personal level, they're going to want to play harder for you. And I don't think the Panthers team has ever quit on Matt Rhule. And if they had quit on him, that had been a great reason to get rid of him after 2 seasons, even though I felt like he deserved the 3rd year, just based off of just out of principle for me. Like, you're not going to get much out of it. I don't think 2 years is enough to be like, all right, yeah, this guy's not going to work, unless it's just an unmitigated disaster like it was in New York with Joe Judge and the Giants. So I don't know how many rounds of golf he needs to play, but I am happy to see Matt Rhule is making that kind of effort to really get to know his guys heading into 2022, as he hasn't really had the opportunity to. And he's understanding that if these guys don't know me, I don't know them. How can we trust each other? How can we have success? And that's smart. And he's learned. So let's move on now to Steven. He said, what's up, Julian? What's up, Steven? Love the pod and content you give out. Thanks, man. Thank you for listening. My question is, if Sam Darnold leads the Panthers to the playoffs in 2022, do you think the Panthers offer a new contract? And he puts that in all caps. What does that contract look like? I know I know it'd depend on his performance. So let's say Panthers go 10-1. Sam throws 24 touchdowns, 9 interceptions, 3,800 yards. Yeah, I mean, if the Panthers go 10-7, I say 10-1. If the Panthers go 10-7, Sam puts up those numbers, I feel like he would be back next season. I think they would give him an opportunity to be back. Now, what does the deal look like? You have to think about, you have Matt Corral here as well. Maybe, what was the deal? Let me look this up. What was the deal that Ryan Tannehill got with the Tennessee Titans? Because that might be something to really look at as maybe what they would want. Now, I don't know about that. That's a lot of money. Tannehill is currently on a 4-year, $118 million deal, and it's $62 million guaranteed at signing. So the Titans can get out of the deal. I mean, they could have got out of it this past offseason if they wanted to, but they didn't do that. So really, that's a 2-year deal worth $31 million, which that's what it takes, man, to pay quarterbacks. I would think that they might try and go with a similar deal, and it could be a 4-year deal, but really it's 2 years. If he plays well and he gets that 3rd season and even maybe that 4th season. So that's what I would think that maybe they might be interested in doing. Now you're going to look at him like, that's way too much money for Sam Darnold. Maybe not 30 million, maybe get to the $28 million range. Or Darnold's also going to be a free agent. And if he plays well enough, and he's going to be like, hey, like I'm a top 3 pick. I've finally gotten to the point where I was in a good situation, good system, and I played better behind a good offensive line. And I would imagine McCaffrey would be healthy, and DJ would play well, and Terrace Marshall would emerge, and Robbie would bounce back. It's like, look what I had finally around me, and I played well. So I think I would look at Tannehill as maybe something that might be what they're looking at there for Sam Darnold. So yeah, I think they would probably try and work for a contract. If he's a top 3 pick, they brought him in for a reason. They try to replace him for a reason as well. I don't really think they replace him with someone that is a slam dunk at this moment in time in Matt Corral. So yeah, sure. Why wouldn't they try and bring back Sam Darnold? All right. Next one. I think he gets 20 your real name, folks. Gills, I think is what it is. No idea. He said this is what he's saying. I said on opening day last year, the special teams coordinator needed to be fired, that being Chase Blackburn. Elite talent doesn't affect the team without good coaching. I'm hopeful for Paul. Paul, you mean Chris Tabor. Chris Tabor is a special teams coordinator. With us being able to run the football now, along with special team additions like Hecker, I feel like this alone adds 3 wins the last season. Okay, so you think 3 wins is added just by better special teams? Possibly. Do you feel the same, or are you one of those who lumps this off because special teams doesn't matter? Field position with running team is huge. Most Panthers coverage has failed to address this. Your thoughts? Great work, sir. Yeah, no, special teams obviously matters. There's 3 facets of the game. There's offense, defense, and special teams, and we've seen over the course of the last couple of years how special teams matters. I mean, ask the Green Bay Packers if special teams matters. Go back to that divisional round game that they played against San Francisco, and how the worst special teams unit in the NFL ended up losing that game, where San Francisco offensively did really nothing all day all night in the snow. So yeah, special teams absolutely matters. I mean, the kicking game, we've seen it. We've seen the Panthers lose games because of missed field goals, whether it was Joey Sly, famously in New Orleans, or it was, Graham Gano missing that 50-yarder in Seattle a couple years ago. And we even seen how you can win games where the Panthers tried to throw away a game that same season back, I think it was 2018, against the Giants, and Graham Gano hit that 62-yarder or whatever the hell it was. Like, yeah, special teams obviously is important, and field position is a key thing. And with Hecker now, you're going to be able to win that battle. You can put the ball inside the 10. Like, yeah, I think special teams absolutely is important. Will it add 3 wins? I don't really know, but I'm sure it would have added a win or 2 over the last couple seasons had they had better specialists and performed better on that side of the ball or in that phase of the game. So, yeah, I absolutely think that special teams is important. So, yeah, I mean, it can only help them win more games. And that's one of the things, like the margins. They talk about is how in the NFL, I mean, it's supposed to be built where every team is equal for the most part. You got to be smarter, got to do the right things, but just the margins are so thin. And if you can get a block kick here, or you can get a good return there, you can pin them in there, and that can force them to have to run the football on the first, second down, to try and get in position where they can be in a passing down. That can add pressure, and that can get you off the field in good position. So, yeah, I absolutely think special teams is vitally important, especially for a Carolina Panthers team that hasn't really shown over the first 2 seasons that they're overwhelmingly better than anybody in the NFL. So if they can gain an advantage through special teams, then yeah, I'm all for it. All right, let's go to Abby, who actually has 2 questions. I answer the first one and then get it to the second one. Abby says, Matt Rhule sent his press conference earlier this week that Ickey has a long way to go at the left tackle position while giving high praise to Brady Christensen during camp so far. Do fans need to reevaluate the perception that Ickey is going to come in and be a day 1 all-pro starting left tackle? Is there any real chance that Brady takes the left tackle spot? Also, should we adjust our expectations of Ickey for at least the first few games? Well, yeah. I mean, if anyone's expecting Ickey Ekwonu to come and be an all-pro starting left tackle from the jump, like, I think that they're maybe a little bit over their skis. And I don't want to say that they're crazy, because obviously it's the realm of possibility. It could happen. I just don't really feel like that should be the expectation. And why I mentioned earlier how I am not enamored necessarily with the situation of, hey, 2 really young guys with Christensen at left guard and an Ickey at left tackle potentially there to start off the season. And he's going up against Myles Garrett. Guys, y'all, really, do you honestly believe, and he might do it, I'm not going to say he won't, but the advantage is going to be Myles Garrett to start off the season. And after that, I look at it, I think he's going to get Cam. Well, Cam Jordan usually going to be on the side of Taylor Moton, and really Taylor Moton's taking care of him. Maybe they want to switch it up and find a way to Cam, try and put him on a rookie. I think Ickey would be fine, but it takes time. Like, there's been guys like, Andrew Thomas, who was one of those big offensive linemen who came up from Georgia. He struggled with the New York Giants. You had who's got the Jets from Louisville. He struggled. I can't remember his name, but he's someone who's struggling. The Jets might already be over him. Like, Cam Irving is a guy on the roster. I don't remember where he was drafted, but he was a first rounder as well. You got to give these guys some time to figure it out. I think it'll help them out immediately in the run game, and I think he'll eventually take care of it there at left tackle. I just don't think we should be like, oh, yeah, he's going to come and he's going to immediately have a Rashawn Slater type season. It could happen. Absolutely. He's talented enough to do that. But, yeah, I mean, maybe if you're thinking that Ickey's going to come in right away and be like the god at left tackle or a god at left tackle, maybe slightly adjust your expectations to like something more normal and realistic. It could happen. Again, I'm not going to say it's not going to happen, but he's a rookie coming in the NFL, going up against the best pass rushers in the league. Like, in the ACC, Pitt, I don't think NC State really plays Pitt anyway, but Pitt has great defensive line, and so does Clemson. Plays Clemson every year, did fairly well against Clemson. Outside of that, wasn't seeing the kind of guys he's going to see week in and week out in the NFL that he's going to see coming up this season. So, yeah, I don't think you should be down on Ickey. You should absolutely have high expectations for what he can be. It's just, it's going to take time, the whole process of getting there. On your second question, Abby, was it a mistake to re-sign PJ Walker? It seems like every time we hear about an interception during preseason training, it came from PJ. Happened last year, I think, and recently on one to Horn, the other day. I know interceptions happen, but PJ didn't perform particularly well when thrown into games. Granted, we were already in bad spots typically when he went in. Was it worth to re-sign him, even as a presumed third-string quarterback behind Darnold and Corral? Well, when we talked to Jonathan Alexander a couple weeks ago, he said that if the Panthers do bring in another quarterback, that PJ Walker will be the odd man out here in Carolina, and they would try to probably get him back on the practice squad, but he's already kind of shown that he can be a valuable asset to a team. I think he's one of the low-end backup quarterbacks in the National Football League, in my opinion. He's been 2-0, and in those games, like, he's threw 2 interceptions, both in the red zone. back in 2020 against the Detroit Lions, and the Panthers defense didn't give up a single point. And then last year against Arizona, the defense was phenomenal. He threw an interception. When PJ Walker plays that there's going to be a turnover. And I don't think that when you have the backup in there that you really want to have the situation where he's going to, going in, he's going to give the ball to the other team. Now, I think the defense has especially stepped up in those situations to help him out and to play above their heads those days, especially back in 2020. And a great situation with Kyler Murray and Nuke Hopkins not being available last year in Arizona. I don't think they made a mistake. Like, you want someone who has experience. This is going to be his third year here in Carolina. Now he's also learning a new system as well. But having him to where if week one Darnold goes down, you're not throwing out your rookie quarterback because you have someone who's actually played in the NFL. I think that's a good situation. But again, if they bring in somebody else, he'll be gone anyways, and then you don't have to worry about it. But no, I don't think it's a mistake. I mean, it's June. We know what we kind of have in PJ Walker. Maybe he can take a step further. I don't know. I don't think it's a mistake at all to bring in a guy who's at least been here in the organization and has shown that when you play him, he can help your team win games, even if he's not like the top guy. All right, one more quick pause, and I'll answer the rest of your questions here on this edition of the Weekly Friday Mailbag on Locked On Panthers. Okay, got two more questions here on this Friday. Again, next week, guys, if you want to participate, just follow me on Twitter at Julian Council and DM me at Julian Council over there on Twitter. You can also at me, no longer taking questions off of YouTube. Just come right directly to me through my DMs, and I'll get to your question next week on the Weekly Friday Mailbag here on Locked On Panthers. Going now to Josh. He asked, if you were going to build a fantasy football team with all-time Panthers players, what would your team look like? And I love these kind of questions too, because I did spend some time writing it down, trying to think about who I would have. And I think I have 11 offense, 11 defense. What's counted right? Yes, I think we're good there. And also have specialists as well. Can't ignore them. Let's start off with the offense. And we're going to start off with our favorite position group to talk about here on the podcast. And really, it feels like in Panthers Nation. Let's start with the offensive line. Starting left tackle, Jordan Gross. I think that's a no-brainer. Left guard, Travell Wharton was a really good player here in Carolina for a long time. Maybe not great, but he was a solid player for the Panthers. Center, Ryan Khalil. Again, I feel like a no-brainer. At right guard, going to go Trey Turner, who was a multi-time Pro Bowler, someone that they traded away a couple years ago to bring in the rented tackle, Russell Okung. I think he's now in Pittsburgh. He was in San Diego or Los Angeles, the Chargers, and was injured. But Trey Turner, when he was here, was a really good player for the Carolina Panthers. And right tackle, he's been steady for us for the first 5 years of his career so far. Taylor Moton there at right tackle. Quarterback, no-brainer. Cam Newton, the only franchise quarterback that we've ever had here in Carolina. Yes, Jake Delhomme was extremely clutch in the playoffs, and he's up in the Hall of Honor, Ring of Honor. Again, I got to figure out what it's actually called. And love Jake. We'll always love Jake. Jake is not Cam. And it was never Cam at those heights. So I'm going to have Cam Newton as my quarterback. Running back is a tough one. You've had D'Angelo Williams. You've had, 1 year of Stephen Davis, when he was really good. You've had, of course, Jonathan Stewart, the all-time leading rusher. And you got a guy in Christian McCaffrey. And I think someone asked me the other day I think it might have been last week about the running backs. And I chose McCaffrey. I just think Christian does things that those guys just never have, just don't do. And I know he hasn't been injured. I know he's been injured the last couple of seasons, and that has certainly impacted the way fans view him. And whenever he gets back in the field and he's healthy again, I think y'all will be right back in love with Christian McCaffrey, because that's how fans are, very fickle in nature. And I understand it. I'm not necessarily saying I'm not the same way, but Christian, that would be my guy at running back. Then wide receiver, I think, is easy. Steve Smith, greatest Panthers wide receiver of all time. I don't think anyone's ever going to touch him, even DJ. Then you got Muhsin Muhammad. Love Moose. We'll always love Moose. Then my third receiver will be DJ Moore. He's already come out, been phenomenal. Steve said on draft night a couple years ago that they finally found a guy to replace me. And now after the 3-year, $20 million per season extension for DJ, it's very clear that he is wide receiver one here in Carolina and here to stay, hopefully for even longer past that contract. And tight end, Greg Olsen. Plenty of good options like Wesley Walls as well. But Greg Olsen, 3 straight seasons of over 1,000 yards receiving. And you talk about not being able to find someone to replace Steve Smith. Panthers have not been able to find someone to replace Greg Olsen at this time. Maybe it'll be Ian Thomas finally realizing the potential that he has in Ben McAdoo's offense. Maybe it'll be Tommy Trimble, I think it was a 3rd-round pick out of Notre Dame last year, who has, I think, the potential to be a really good pass-catching tight end. So that would be my fantasy all-time Panthers offense. As far as defense, defensive end spot, I'm going to go from one end to the other. Defensive end, Julius Peppers, third all time in sacks in the history of the NFL. And this one, in a way, is tough because you have the top 3 sack leaders in the history of the NFL. You got Reggie White. You got Kevin. Crap. How can I not remember this name right now? Kevin Green. Got Kevin Green, and then you got Julius Peppers. But Reggie White, I don't see as a Panther. He's a Packer. And the same thing with Kevin Green. I don't see him as a Panther, even though he played here. But Julius Peppers, I know he spent time in Chicago for a while, and he went to Green Bay as well, and then he finally came back spent his last 2 years here in Carolina. But he's a Panther. So Julius Peppers at defensive end. Then defensive tackle, got KK Short, was so good when he was healthy here. I hated the last few seasons of him being here that he was injured, had 2 shoulder injuries, one to each shoulder, and missed out. And I think that's kind of hampered the growth of Derek Brown, who needs to really step up this upcoming season. But yeah, KK Short, then Chris Jenkins. We just go back to when it was Peppers and Jenkins and Brinson Buckner. I mean, that just defensive line was just incredible that Super Bowl year in 2003. I guess runner-up year. Then Charles Johnson, all-time sack leader here in Carolina. Got to have Charles Johnson at the other defensive end position. Then at linebacker, I feel like this one's also. You got John Beeson didn't make my list. There's been plenty of good linebackers here in Carolina. Now, recently we kind of the last couple of seasons we've been missing it. But Thomas Davis, he's obviously up there. Him and Luke Kuechly. God, I miss those guys. I miss watching those Panther defenses with those 2 dudes just running sideline to sideline, just wreaking havoc. Can we get back to those days? Can we find 2? I love what he was doing last year. Can we get somebody next to Shaq to do that again? Can Damian Wilson and Shaq Thompson just run riot against these offenses in the NFL this upcoming season? I would love to get back to those days. And then Dan Morgan, the dude had 20 freaking tackles in a Super Bowl. And maybe Beeson deserves it over Morgan. Well, if Dan Morgan doesn't have all those concussions, and thank God it seems like he's fine health wise as he's now the assistant general manager here in Carolina. He spent time back with Brandon Beane in Buffalo, and before that he was in Seattle where he first met Scott Fitterer. But man, I'm glad that health wise he's doing well. But man, that dude was just unbelievable. So those are my linebackers. Then corner, gonna go with Chris Gamble. And where in the world is Chris Gamble? Can someone go find him? Maybe I should go find Chris Gamble and get him on the podcast. I thought he was a great player here. I thought he was a solid player and maybe not overwhelmingly talented, but he maybe he was. His first round pick at Ohio State. So I liked Chris Gamble, and he just kind of disappeared. He's like, all right, I'm done. I could probably keep playing, but now I'm out of here. Which hell, I respect it. So Chris Gamble. Then my other one, Josh Norman. So I'm gonna go Chris Gamble, Josh Norman there. Josh. Maybe he was more of just a scheme fit, went to Washington, and he got his money. And it didn't necessarily work out the way he wanted it to there, but whatever. Josh Norman was phenomenal back in 2015, especially here in Carolina, and in 2014 as well. Then safeties, Mike Minner. That's an easy one. And if you look at the Panthers, we don't have a long list of great safeties here. So I'm going to go with Jeremy Chinn. Second player in Panthers history to have over 100 tackles in his first 2 seasons with John Beeson and Luke Kuechly. Jeremy Chinn would be my other safety. Now, I think both of them are strong safeties, but we'll figure it out. One of them will play free, but it doesn't matter. As far as my safeties, that's my fantasy defense. Now, specialist, what you've all been waiting for. Long snapper, JJ Jansen, who does not need to win a long snapper job this year. Thomas Fletcher needs to win it, but hey, if JJ wins again, so be it. I love it. JJ Jansen. Long snapper, longest tenured Panther currently on the roster. That's my all-time long snapper. Kicker, this one's also easy. John Casey, I get it. I know he kicked the ball out of bounds. Also, I challenge you to spell his name correctly because plenty of people who like to trash John Casey and bring up that moment during Super Bowl 38 can't even spell the dude's name. And maybe you don't want to dignify him by spelling his name correctly. I don't know. Maybe that's you. And then punter, Todd Sauerbrunn, who's also spent time here in Carolina with John Casey, was his holder for a lot of years and was an all-pro twice here in Carolina. So that is my fantasy all-time Carolina Panthers team. And final question of the week, and I love this one. And it comes from Panther Dan on Twitter, and he really wanted me to answer this seriously. He sent me a photo of Ben McAdoo back when he was with the Giants in his hairdo. Now, Ben McAdoo's kind of got like the lacrosse hockey lettuce going on now. He seems he's got a different vibe to him. When you saw him in New York, excuse me, he was like maybe not the best looking guy. I'm not calling him ugly. I'm not calling him good looking either. But I wasn't loving the hairdo. And he certainly got mocked a lot of times. So Panther Dan wants to know, do I prefer the slick back look for Ben McAdoo or the 1990s Tony Hawk style look for Ben McAdoo? Guys, I like the slick back. Slick back, way too much hair gel, got the sunglasses. That's my favorite Ben McAdoo look of the two. Now, I like what he's got going on now, but my favorite McAdoo will always be the slick back McAdoo with the shades. So there's your serious answer that you really wanted there, Panthers Dan. All right, guys, that's going to wrap up this edition of the Weekly Friday Mailbag here on Locked On Panthers, hosted by yours truly, Julian Council. Again, we're a part of the Locked On Podcast Network. I almost forgot what we were part of. Again, make sure to subscribe to the show and watch the show on YouTube because you don't want to miss a single episode as we're only on Mondays, Tuesdays, and Wednesdays right now. Although next week we do have mandatory minicamp going on. So I might get you all an episode for Monday morning. I feel like it makes sense. Well, hell, when is mandatory minicamp start? As I'm going to do this in the middle of all this. It starts on the 14th. The 14th is not Monday. So either way, okay, so Tuesday, never mind. Monday night, I'll have a mandatory minicamp kind of preview. And then after those days, it's the 14th, the 15th, and the 16th. So Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday. I think they're going to be speaking to the media. And if they are speaking to the media after every single one of those days, then expect a podcast probably every day of the week next week. If they're Mondays for the mandatory minicamp preview, then Tuesday if they speak to the media, Wednesday they speak to the media, and then Thursday, the final day, to speak to the media, and then Friday, of course, will be the Weekly Friday Mailbag. So probably next week going to have 5 episodes because, hey, there's stuff going on. There's news. Let's get into it. We'll talk about it. So mandatory minicamp coming up next week. But in the meantime, again, make sure to rate, review, and subscribe to the show on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, Stitcher, Odyssey, and all the other podcasting platforms out there. And be sure to follow me on Twitter. So next week, you can participate on the Weekly Friday Mailbag here on Locked On Panthers. Do so either at me at Julian Council or really just DM me. Slide in those DMs at Julian Council there on Twitter and answer your questions next week on Locked On Panthers. Everyone stay safe this weekend. I'm headed off to Atlanta. Going to go see Coldplay. Can't wait for that. So stay safe, be whole, be happy, keep pounding as always, and I will talk to y'all on Monday.